and it looks like we're on Zoom. We've got two councillors on Zoom, Councillor Greening and Councillor Walker is entering now, and Councillor Hill. Thank you for that. I'll just ask Elaine to open with karakia.
Tuia ki runga, tuia ki raro, tuia ki roto, tuia ki waho, tuia tātou te tangata, ki te kaupapa o te hui nei, ki te kaupapa o te rangi nei, mauri ora, ki a tātou katoa.
Kia ora. Right, well, thank you, everyone. Just before we start, for members that are here for the first time, toilets are out through the doors and on the left. If we get an alarm, we exit out through the front into the car park. And if it starts to shake, we get under the tables. Okay, I'll just call on Dwayne Fletcher to introduce some new staff before we start.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to introduce you to Pip Jameson. Pip is with us for 1 year, and she will be in Alan's team helping with the blip in work associated with the long-term plan. So you'll be seeing Pip at our workshops and such like when we talk about the long-term plan. Welcome, Pip. The other thing is I just mentioned that David Arsenault's role has changed in the last wee while. You'll recall Walter was a team leader for infrastructure planning and policy, and David has been successfully appointed to that role. Congratulations, David, which leaves us a vacancy to fill. But I just thought I'd let you know. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So we'll just move to apologies. I've got apologies this morning from Councillor McKenzie and apologies for lateness from Deputy Mayor Bryant and Mayor King. Would someone like to move? Move Councillor Dalla, seconded Councillor Murray. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Okay, so we'll move to public forum. And Julian's been here before, but we've got Mary Nichols and Sonia Hammers. You get 5 minutes, and I'll give you a signal at 4.5. So we'll start with Mary, and I think Grant Knowles, you're coming up to support Mary as well. Grant should know how to work that. There it's on.
Thank you for your time today, and I'd just like to say Grant's here to support us for this presentation, so he might have some words to add into this as well. So I believe you all have a copy to read actually with you now or later on. Today I'm representing arts councils in our region and a collective of people who got together to put forth this submission towards having a art strategy for Tasman. I understand we've had one along with Nelson, but it kind of got lost somewhere in the ethers way back in 2009. So I'm just going to run through this, and Grant's going to add some comments. So as a representative group from across Tasman arts sector who is strongly feeling that Tasman District Council actually needs to have a more active role in arts in our district at a community level, we strongly request from TDC to address the needs for art strategy specific to the needs of the Tasman and its diverse range of constituents, and it requires a tailored approach for wellness and community partnerships. And it includes the following points that we would like to see addressed. The TDC take responsibility for arts in our communities, and that's down in grassroots support as well as in management. And it takes it seriously as a community's health and wellness need for every day. A request for funding to develop the new Tasman District Arts Strategy, which reflects the needs of arts of today and onward into the future. Strengthen partnerships in accordance with the values of the Tikanga and Te Tirati. Sorry, my Māori is wrong. Waitangi. new strategy should address gaps in the previous strategy of 2009 to meet the current community needs, including representing and being of service to tangata whenua. And that is 8 iwi trusts for Tasman. Also new migrants, LGBTQs, remote communities, and responsive to the changes of today's technology, which is used both for communication management and, of course, within the arts for creation as well. The new strategy should encompass an entire region, including Murchison, Golden Bay, Motueka, Wakefield, Brightwater, the Lakes, Tapawera, and Richmond, and look to ways of meeting the community's needs through the arts. We request that you review the old Nelson Tasman 2019 strategy that could form a foundation for a new strategy and adopt the best practices from the Nelson strategy of 2022. Also to appoint a full-time or part-time person to coordinate arts within TDC. This could be a contract, as many other councils in New Zealand have done so. This position could oversee all regional art plans under the long-term plan and ensure longevity. And like new buildings designs, to have a portion of the art and policies of simple community art contributions and small-scale initiatives by the community which meets the art plan goals. We also want a need to increase the community arts funding pool to be allocated to arts. Increase of costs over the years. Most of the arts are delivered at ground roots in our district by volunteers, no payment whatsoever. They might get a bit of travel if they're lucky, but it is totally voluntary. There's the odd, they often contract a art worker to deliver a specific project, but those behind doing the hard work on the ground, we're volunteers. So the extra support of funding for management and to run this would be a big help. We'd ask that you set up a consultancy group, which the ones that have come together are willing to continue voluntarily, to support the role to ensure that the plan meets the community expectations and the ongoing insights into needs at a community level. We feel that Nelson Tasman strategy produced in 2019, the art of being at the centre, which Tasman is out of date. While some good outcomes were produced from that art, such as at the moment, while our welcoming signs to the entranceways for most of Tasman's towns. The Bank Art Gallery in Tākeka showcasing local art, now called Art Vault. 5 major artworks, as far as I could find. There may be more out there that I've missed. 2 of them in Motueka, 2 in Richmond, and 1 in Wakefield. I apologise if I missed Tākeka.
We didn't get one.
Significant art, Māori artwork and the cultural information that was included into the Motueka Library is a fantastic example of how art and creativity can be brought into public buildings or any buildings within our community. There are, however, some really large gaps that we need a strategy that reflects the world that we live in now. The Local Government Act of 2002 states that one of the purposes of local government is to promote the social, economic, environmental, and cultural well-being in communities in the present and for the future. This is the most fundamental reason for strengthening the arts sector in any community. In line with 2 of the TDC's own strategy priorities, there are strong resilience, including inclusive communities, contributing to a diverse society, and celebrating our extensive cultural and heritage that we have in this district. We feel art should go beyond just being public art. It should be seen as part of people's well-being at a community level and involvement for them. thanks for your consideration on that. And as you see at the bottom of that article, there are the people, named people of those that were part of the writing and creation of this submission. Grant.
Thanks, and thanks for listening today. Look, I just want to express the fact that Golden Bay, as an example, at the moment we have 100 artists, visual artists, represented in the 5 galleries in the main street of Takaka, which is probably quite a lot in comparison to other areas for population. The council had Mike Tasman-Jones as an arts worker here. When he left, both Lani and Yulia have taken over the roles. The inconsistency a little bit with that has and it's no fault of their own, but I think we need another dedicated person in council to actually take that role on board, even if it's only a few hours a week. That consistency is extremely vital. So as part of the strategy or as part of this submission, I'd like to see the long-term plan involve this aspect as well.
Thanks, Grant. We're a little bit over time. So
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now ask Gillian Bishop. Morning, Gillian. You've been here before, so I'm sure you know the rules.
Thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Gillian Bishop, toku ingoa. I was chair of the Waimea Inlet coordinating group up until the last meeting, and I'm here today because I think on your agenda you have consideration of the Waimea Inlet strategy and action plan. And I thought it would be relevant to give you a bit of history of the Waimea Inlet strategy and action plan and some evidence of the huge importance of this plan in enabling funding for projects on the inlet. And the funding and the grants that I'll be talking about are those that are in addition to the resources allocated by TDC, Nelson City Council, DOC and others within their allocated budgets for environmental work. So the planning started in 2009 when councils commenced work on the Waimea Inlet strategy. That was finalised in 2010 and signed off by TDC, Nelson City Council, DOC, Fish and Game with iwi acknowledgement. The strategy is non-statutory, so it was for your reference, but not obligatory. The strategy notes that Waimea Inlet has changed dramatically over the past 200 years and requires a long-term commitment to protect and enhance the inlet by the community and its councils. I think that's certainly in development.
Sonia, I've got to stop you there. We've got Zoom problems, so people can't hear.
Right.
So what we'll do is we'll just have an adjournment for 5 minutes to have a technical fix because the 3 councillors on Zoom probably can't hear you.
Right.
If you can hear me, pretty
I can hear you, Kit.
Yeah, I can hear you, Kit, now that I've got the right link. Thanks.
So we'll just stop. We'll just wait for 5 to make sure it's going. Okay, I'm assured it's now, we've fixed what was going wrong.
Yep.
So, Gillian, I'm sorry to stop you like
That's
that,
all right.
but
Quite
I'm
all
sure with your experience, you'll be able to get back into it. Okay.
So just talking about the history of the strategy and action plan for Waimea Inlet. So the strategy was finalised in 2010. In 2014, DOC opened the first round of their community funding, and Waimea Inlet Forum was successful in receiving a grant for Battle for the Banded Rail, which was initially focused on planting around the estuary margin, but later funds for trapping were sourced. And this project has subsequently attracted funding from lotteries, RATA, Trees That Count, World Wildlife Fund, Jasmine Foundation, and many others, and has continued to work with the community and TDC support to protect and restore the margins of the Waimea Inlet, with the assistance of large numbers of volunteers, 40 or more, every Sunday throughout planting season since 2014. It's amazing. Approximately 83,000 plants have been planted by volunteers in 26 different locations since the project commenced. And there are also 1,000 DOC 200 traps around the inlet looked after by volunteers. Tasman Environmental Trust provides management support for the restoration and trapping work. But that's a bit of a diversion. Back to the planning. In 2017, the parties to the strategy realised that to really make progress to achieve the goals of the strategy, an action plan was needed. So the Waimea Inlet Coordinating Group was formed, and the action plan 2018 to 2021 was developed. The participating organisations in the coordinating group are Te Tauihu Iwi, TDC, Nelson City Council, DOC, Fish and Game, Tasman Environmental Trust, and Waimea Inlet Forum. It's a wonderful collaboration between those organisations. It's a really powerful and effective group. Anna Garrity from TDC has supported the coordinating group from the beginning and has made a sustained and valuable contribution to its development and implementation. We really applaud Anna for her work for the coordinating group. With the support of the strategy and action plan, Tasman Environmental Trust was successful in obtaining just over $1 million from the 1 Billion Trees Fund in January 2020 to plant 61,000 plants. Actually, 94,000 plants went in the ground, and maintenance of the plantings continues under this grant. The multi-organisation collaboration, as evidenced by the strategy and action plan, also enabled Waimea Inlet to benefit greatly from Jobs for Nature and other funding associated with COVID relief. In 2022, TDC received funding from MFE for 2 distinct projects, the Waimea Inlet 1 Billion Trees Phase 2, and that was an additional 1.1 million, plus some other contributions from other organisations like Waimea Water, the Sewerage Business Unit, and Trees That Count, aimed at a large-scale planting around the estuary, including fencing and maintenance. The original aim was for 70,000 plants, but that will end up being more like 100,000 in 11 locations around the inlet. And then there's the Waimea Inlet Enhancement Project, $500,000 from MFE, including some additional funding from Nelson City Council, Trees That Count, and from within TDC. And that has enabled the really wonderful Waimea Delta wetland work. I don't know if you've been down there and seen that at the end of Cotterell Road. It's just going to be fantastic. And the update of the Waimea Inlet Management Strategy and Action Plan, because as you'll realise, the 2018 to 2021 plan had reached the end of its time. It's been a long process getting the planning completed. The new strategy part of the plan looks out to 2050, and the action plan is for 2023 to 2025. It's been facilitated by Peter Lawless, so it's consistent with the strategies of the Tasman Biodiversity Strategy and the Kotai Tangamuti Taiao Strategy. It's been through a long process of consultation with iwi and has their endorsement. I recommend that you look to the big picture and adopt the plan. We're anxious to move on to the implementation of these worthy goals. Just to conclude, in summary, under the previous plan, the additional funds obtained from outside organisations was over $3 million. The total number of plants around the inlet has been about 277,000, and the traps around the inlet is 1,200. And there's been a huge number of volunteer hours. So you can see that adopting the plan gives us a lot of power when we're talking to outside organisations for additional funding, and it's a very valuable collaborative instrument. Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian. I had the pleasure of looking at some of your traps yesterday while I was biking around the estuary and some of the planting, and you can certainly see some big improvements.
It's going to be fantastic in 5 years' time when everything grows.
Yeah, thank you. So now we've got Sonia Hammonds. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. So same rules, Sonia, 5 minutes.
Kia ora, everyone. For me, this is quite unexpectedly that I do this presentation, because the day before yesterday, I emailed Christine McKenzie about the plan change 76, and that we would like to know where it was all at, and for Wakefield. And then, to my surprise, I heard that today the council will be asked to withdraw the plan change. So my name is Sonia Lammers. We have in our group, there's a group called Homes for Wakefield, which is a subcommittee of the Wakefield Community Council. We have in our group Richard Martin, Sylvia Huxtable, and Tony Aldridge. We did a survey in 21 or 2020, and clearly in that became apparent that we needed more smaller houses. We talked to the developer of the plans in Pitfield Road. There was a willingness at that time to consider smaller houses. Unfortunately, the infrastructure that was asked for to the government didn't proceed. In the meantime, we were assured that we would get information, that we would be communicated with. I have this in writing from the policy people here. We would be consulted. What happened was there were submissions taken. After the submissions were taken, suddenly the developer could resubmit, which is for me not the right process, because then we could not submit on that, but that's a different issue. Then in November, we were told that we would not have, that the submissions would not go to oral hearings for a while. This would happen in early 23. This was extended and extended. I made several contacts with policy people here. Every time I was told it will be July, it will be August. And then 2 days ago, I get this email from Christine to say that it will be withdrawn. So I don't think that the process has been followed here. We need communication with our Wakefield people, with our group that to a certain extent represents Wakefield. Both Richard, Martin and myself are very disappointed with the process that has been followed. And we wish to ask this committee to defer your decision so that we can have more community consultation to see what this holds, what this whole document about withdrawal of proposed plan change 76, what that means for our community. We have not been consulted, although you have said, and I've got this in writing from several people, that we would be consulted. We have not been consulted. How would you feel if you were told that you would be consulted, and it's 9 months ago that the submissions were, and now nobody has been talking to us as a group, nor in any of the community meetings. So I'm just trying to read this out because I'm a bit nervous because I haven't had the time to talk this over.
Just take your time.
Yeah. So we feel that 10 years time, it has been spoken about that this will take 10 years to implement infrastructure. Well, we haven't got 10 years for our older people. Our older people want to live in our community. They cannot live in our community. They have to go away out of Wakefield. They have to live somewhere else. We are a special community. We want our older people to live in our community. It's not possible. We want to have solutions that fits us, and we want to have communication. So I asked the council on behalf of our group that you defer your decision and that you first talk to the Wakefield Community Council and to the submitters to discuss this whole bookwork of wording that I have not enough information about. That you talk first to us, because without communication there is no democracy, and there's no, and you will not get people to be part of this communication. We all have submitted and have not had a chance to be consulted. We feel that nothing will be happening in the next 10 years because of the infrastructure issues. In the meantime, our older people in Wakefield will leave Wakefield for greener pastures and cannot keep on living in their own community. This has been done in secrecy. No one was notified. We have not been notified, whereas I have it in writing from the council that we would be notified. You called us stakeholders. We were called stakeholders in this group of working with council on issues around housing. So if I see myself as a stakeholder, I want to sit around the table with you. Not myself, I hope to represent our community. Are there any questions?
No, we don't. We only have questions of clarification, but I think you've certainly made your point, Sonia.
Yeah, but we certainly haven't had time to consider the consequences of this report. I think that's the main thing, that we only received it yesterday. I had a phone call at 6 o'clock this morning with Richard Martin of 7. And so we have just not had the time to consider this report. And I think the council owes it to us to wait with a decision and to come to the council, to our council, to the Wakefield Community Council, make a presentation, have a few questions and answers so that we can have a discussion and see where we go from here. I know that.
So that's fine, Sonia.
Yeah.
Your time's up, and there is one person who's got a quick or a councillor of clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's clarification. My button's not working. Shall I wait a second?
Yeah.
That's okay. Just a clarification. Are you here representing the Wakefield Community Council today?
I am representing the subcommittee of the Wakefield Community Council. I have not had time to talk to our council because it was only mentioned to me yesterday that I got it from Christine, that this was up on the agenda.
Okay. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll just move on. I think I did apologies. So next item is declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest this morning? Joe? Oh, Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. I just wanted to, just for the point of being open, is that item 9.2 I am currently as a role as councillor on the Waimea Inlet Coordination Group, just to keep it open.
You're our representative on that group. Okay, so no new declaration of interest. We've got confirmation of minutes. So the minutes held on the 13th of July. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Dowler, seconded. Councillor Dakey. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. I'm just making sure we've still got a quorum. A couple walked out, but we did, because we've got 3 online. Yep. Yep. So we will move the Wakefield issue forward. I'll just do my chair's report first, and then we'll move the Wakefield issue forward so Sonia can hear what we're going to do. Okay, so my chair report, I'd like to take it as read. The only changes, I understand the MBA went through its 3rd reading. I think Barry's going to nod to me at the back last week, as I understand it. So it's just got to get royal consent now. So it hadn't been passed when I wrote the report. And as I said, we're waiting on the minister in terms of Kora Waipupu Springs. So other than that, I'd like someone to move my report. Councillor Maru, seconded Councillor Dowler. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. So we'll now just take the Wakefield Plan Change 76 out of order, bring it forward, and if Anna and maybe Barry come to the table, and then that means that Sonia's here and she can listen to our deliberations. So it's in your papers, and over to you, Anna.
Thank you. I'll take the report as written, but I'll just summarise the following reasons for withdrawing the plan change. We're proposing to withdraw it. In the process, we believe that it will create a risk to council, having to divert funds and resources required to meet the requirements of the National Policy Statement on Urban Development. This, during the LTP work, we've had to revise the Tasman growth model, and as part of this work, we need to meet our short and medium growth requirements, and it means we need to do an urban growth plan change for the district. And as part of that work, it's identified several sites in Wakefield that need to be brought forward to be rezoned. So that's a conversation I think that Barry will be having with you later in terms of the policy work program. But it's a requirement to meet the National Policy Statement on urban development. And this site, because we missed out on the Infrastructure Acceleration Fund money, it's not able to be brought forward in terms of infrastructure funding and servicing. So it hasn't been identified as a priority site for that urban development plan change. So using our funding and resources to support continuing this work program will prevent us from putting those resources and funds towards doing this urban growth plan change that we urgently need to do. It doesn't mean that the work's lost, because what we're proposing to do is incorporate this site into that plan change for Wakefield and the wider district, and utilise, do a more comprehensive assessment of Wakefield and that urban plan change. One of the submission points from Homes for Wakefield was that they weren't consulted enough during the process of Plan Change 76. So this will enable us to do more consultation with the community. It will enable us to look at all of those FDS sites that are needed in the short and medium term, and this individual parcel of land that is part of this plan change, and build a more comprehensive assessment, I guess, of what medium density residential housing requirements are and the impacts of that on Wakefield are. So that's the reasoning behind wanting to withdraw this plan change. And we're hoping through doing this urgent plan change, which we've commenced the work on already. So it's the background work anyway. So it will enable us in terms of resourcing and funding to be diverted into that parcel of work. So I hope I've explained that clear enough.
Right, just questions. Celia, do you want to ask? And I'll ask.
Yeah,
Microphone.
thank you. And I'm just well, got a query about the process of communication.
Mhm.
And I appreciate that sometimes, you know, there can be different perception on each side about what communication has happened and what hasn't. So it appears, I'm just asking whether or not there has been, you know, a thought out process, or has it fallen between two stools somehow? Has it been part of the correct local government consultation process? Has there something gone wrong here?
So as part of this proposed plan change, we did quite a comprehensive consultation process. It was consulted along with Brightwater and Wakefield plan changes. Unfortunately, the first round was affected by COVID. So it was online, but we went to the Community Association meeting, which Homes for Wakefield were invited to as a subcommittee, and they were present at that meeting. I've also communicated quite regularly through emails with Homes for Wakefield and other submitters. So in terms of our process, we consider it to be quite a comprehensive consultation process as part of this plan change. But I suppose I have heard them as part of their submission on this that they needed to do more. So, and that's where I'm hoping if council agrees, when we do the new plan change, we can do wider consultation. We hopefully won't have any COVID restrictions, and we can get out into the community more and explain, I suppose, a bit more clearly what is anticipated here.
All right, so I've got three more people with questions. Councillor Greenie, you're first.
Yeah, so initial question is there any issue in deferring a decision until the next meeting? Is it that urgent?
Through Chair, no, there's no urgency.
Okay, that's good.
We do. Sorry.
Yeah, so we can pause here. I think it's important that if we're communicated to a group that they're going to be involved and we haven't done that we should at least explain to them, as you're trying to explain to us, what's going on, so that we have the community actively involved. It's their community, and they are concerned that they don't know what's going on. So I think it's important, if we have the time, and you've indicated we do, that we defer it. So I'll invite the chair, before I go to my next question, whether he just wants to defer this document, given staff have indicated that they can wait till the next meeting.
I'll just
just be mindful too that we are in the legal process now, so that plan change has been notified, and there's the legal steps that we follow. So we notify, we have submissions, further submissions, which has happened, and we have a time frame within which to make a decision, whether that's withdraw or to take it to hearing and issue a decision. So it's part of we're in the middle of a legal process. So in terms of we can definitely have those discussions with the community, but in terms of where we go from here, it's relatively binary, I guess. We either take it to a hearing and progress it through to a decision, or we withdraw the plan change.
But as I understand it, through Chair, we have the time to speak to the community before bringing this decision back to this council again for a decision, in line with the timelines that are already in train.
Yep, we'll just go through the other questions before we make a decision on that, but your point's taken, Mark.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah. Okay. My other question, where are we? Just relates to a comment just made in the presentation this morning, which is a suggestion that there's an obligation to fund infrastructure if it's in the plan. Can you clarify that? And if that is the case, what's the timeline to implement the infrastructure?
In terms of this site, it's planned for 9 years, this infrastructure.
Yeah, so you suggested that there had to be a change because we didn't have any funding for it or resources for it at the moment, and there was an obligation to fund the infrastructure if it's planned for. So if we don't have the funding to do it and we're planned for it, wouldn't it just sit there? I mean, is there an obligation to fund the infrastructure if we have a plan to do it?
In order to rezone the land, then there has to be infrastructure available or provided for. So if there's no infrastructure, then any decision to rezone that can be challenged and it would fall over. There's quite a robust case law around that issue. If you're rezoning land, then through your Section 32, you need to demonstrate that there is infrastructure planned for and financed, and it is certain. In this case, it is uncertain in terms of when the timing and what that infrastructure looks like.
So just to get clarity on what we've just said, we already have a plan in place for development. Apparently there is no infrastructure that can be funded within the 9 years. And you're saying that then the plan would be challenged and fall over. Is that right?
I'm sorry, I don't quite follow you. We have an FDS which identifies land for future development. The next step is then to implement that through plan changes. And so if we're going to rezone that for residential purposes, then there needs to be infrastructure planned for and financed through the LTP and certain. And in this case, there is no certainty around that servicing for that location.
So you're saying that the plan that we have in place, the FDS, can't be. I'm just trying to understand what you were suggesting around why we need this plan change, and we need this plan change because there is no funding. And I'm just trying to follow. This is a plan change. There's already a plan, right?
Councillor Green, if I recall, this plan change was put in place because we were applying for funding from a special government issue to accelerate housing, and we weren't successful. The only area we were successful in was in Motueka.
This plan change is the current plan, right?
No, this plan change was in relation to getting that funding and providing more houses in Motueka, and the funding was for infrastructure to enable it to happen much sooner. We put in for a number of areas, and Mr. Fletcher was involved, and I think we were successful in Motueka only. So that was the reason behind this plan change originally. But I do take the point that you said about consultation, and we made it furthest, but I'll just move on. I've got Councillor Walker and then Councillor Maru.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair. Yeah, I'm kind of going down the line that Councillor Greening is, that Sonia, on behalf of her team, came and spoke to us today. She has concerned as a stakeholder that we haven't consulted and taken them on this journey, that her submissions were put in, and if I heard correctly, that was 9 months ago. And then a day before today's meeting, they find out that this is being removed. I totally get that, when COVID was here, most of us were locked away and we couldn't go and face-to-face our communities. But actually, we knew that we hadn't gone to face our communities. And this is not the first meeting this week that I've attended where the impact of not consulting has actually been detrimental to our relationships with our communities. And I'm really hoping that as a council that our processes are looked at so that we never have to go through this again, knowing that what happened back then with COVID the impact that that has. So I'm really keen to defer this today to actually go back to some of our key stakeholders and take them through the explanation as to where we're at and why. I can see that we don't really have a choice at the end of the day, but I personally believe that our community needs to be consulted. They need to understand and not be told a day before a meeting, actually, this is being pulled. Thank you. So I guess my question is, do we have the capacity to actually defer this decision?
Okay, so I've just had Brent, if you wanted to think, but what my proposal would be, would we just defer this decision till our next meeting, which will be in 6 weeks' time, and that will enable the staff to make sure that they go and talk with that group. So do we need a motion, or we just don't do it? Right. So I'll just get that done. So I think that's the appropriate thing to do. Those are, Councillor Murray, if you've got a question as well. So I'm agreeing with you, Councillor Walker and Councillor Greening. Thanks for the
So I
thumbs up.
was also happy to second Councillor Greening's motion if it was one. But my question relates to the if I go to our page 187 and the map that shows the different zonings. So this plan change was to request a change from rural 2 to rural 2 deferred residential zone. If this plan is withdrawn, does the NPS for the protection of rural land then prevent this from being submitted again, or does the FDS have the overriding guidance for that?
The future development strategy has overarching. It's already been identified for future growth. And if you note also that part of the land is already zoned residential, so the landowner can actually develop that as standard residential.
And your change in urban development that you're doing, that you've started work on, will look for intensification, I would have thought, in brownfield intensification within Wakefield. You're nodding, so I understand that's correct.
And I think that's sorry, Anna. I think the crucial point here is we've got to take a wider strategic view on this. I mean, presumably this is a block of land, but we have to look at the whole servicing of Wakefield, in terms of capacity. So I'm just framing it a little bit around that the world's changed a little bit, and we actually need to have that wider view on life. But we'll go and do if you decide to defer, we can go and have a conversation with the community again. But we will caution you to think, this has to be a wider strategic view on life.
That's what I thought. Councillor Shellcrest?
Yeah, I was just happy to defer that and head the chair down this path. Thank you.
All right, so we've got a motion that the staff have just come up with. Oh,
that's good. Yeah. Apology for lateness. I did have someone call me about this morning. Just wondered about consultation and how we're going to let the community know. Mr. Chairman. You've done that, covered that?
We have. Councillor Hill, and then we've got a motion up on the table there that defers this.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Is there any risk in deferring? I can understand the idea of it's really about notifying and informing people and helping people understand the necessity to do this. And it seems like perhaps us as councillors too, there's a bit more to get up to speed with, it seems. But is there any risk in deferring the decision to withdraw?
No, we're well within the statutory timeframes, so there's no risk in interfering.
I guess we still might come to the same outcome there.
We could, because
it might be the same outcome that we're determining today, even if with a conversation.
The other thing is that you would be able to explain to the community what the urban development changes that will add, and able to do intensification. Correct, as I understand it?
That is correct. And that discussion's going to council this afternoon or later this morning. So it's kind of happening at the same time, I suppose. Yes.
Okay, so we've got a motion up on the table to defer this to the next policy and strategy meeting. Do I have a mover?
Can I see the motion? I can't see the motion on screen.
Shell costs.
I think it's been shared with those on Zoom now.
Yep, fantastic. Thank you. Happy to support.
Well, you happy to move that, Mark? Seeing as you.
Yeah, I'm happy to move it. Yeah.
Right.
I think Brent was happy to second
Moved,
it.
Councillor Greening, seconded Councillor Maru.
Cool.
We got any speakers to the motion?
Yeah, I just have a question. Why the next meeting? I don't quite understand that.
We've got some statutory processes and we've got to make sure that we do some consultation.
Thank you.
All right, so the motion's on the table. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. So we'll now move back to where I was in the agenda. Waimea Inlet plan. So Anna's coming and Alan.
Tēnā koutou, councillors. I brought George with me today because he's actually a co-author of this report and it has been his project that he's been working on. He just isn't in for council with someone I can add, so he's not actually listed on the paper, but he's played a key role in this project in his project management role with Jobs for Nature. He was the one who engaged the contractor who facilitated the review of the strategy and action plan, and is also overseeing all the work happening around the inlet that we got, the 1.6 million from MFE for, and it was in 2020, I think. I think Gillian said 2022, but we actually received it in 2020, which is a 5-year project. So I will take my report as read since Gillian's given you a good history about the background to it all. I do note though that there is a couple of recommended changes in yellow to the resolutions. One just noting that our participation in the development of the Waimea Inlet Strategy and Action Plan has been through our involvement in the Waimea Inlet Coordination Group. So there are several staff who participate in that group, and also Councillor Ellis is elected to a representative, on it, and Councillor Cunningham is the alternate, and both have been participating. So that's the new resolution 2. I think you just need to renumber resolution 3 there, please, Elaine. That we've just added in yellow, agrees to adopt, and then just been a little bit more specific in relation to the council's role in actions is identified in them specifically. That, and that the reason there's 2 sub clauses there is because the action plan contains things we're already doing that we're already funded to do, and then the last bit asks to support in principle those targets that we've highlighted yellow in the attachment, subject to future funding decisions, because it isn't actually, like, we have a lot of staff work happening, but if there's any extra funding needed, that hasn't yet been decided. So it's just asking you to support those ones in principle. So happy to take any questions. Oh, sorry, one extra thing. The Tasman Environmental Trust has put us to the post and already adopted this plan. They did that last week, I think, but they just wanted one change to the action that related only to them. So it's nothing to do with us anyway. It mistakenly had a date that had already passed, which was June 2023, and they just wanted that to change to June 2024. So that's the only change they asked for, and it doesn't affect us. So yeah, happy to take questions. Thank you.
Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Ian. I just wanted to get a bit of clarification about funding and the DOC Partnerships Fund. Was there what has the Waimea Inlet project received from the DOC Partnership Fund, or did Tasman Environment Trust receive funds from this last round?
Yeah, so Gillian kind of went through that initially back in whatever year it was. I think it was Billion Trees, is that what it's called? So that's why we have 2 parts to the Billion Trees project. So the previous government had a Billion Trees part, and they got 1.1 million initially And because at that time, TET was the person who received the fund and administered it through their accounts on behalf of the group, they received that first 1.1 million. And then when the Jobs for Nature opportunities through COVID came up, we basically just thought, well, we can replicate this project, basically double it. So we asked for another 1.1 million to basically do the same thing again around the inlet and plant the same number of trees, so 70,000. And that money came to TDC instead of TET. And we also asked for 500,000 for the Waimea Inlet enhancement money project at that same time. So we got 1.6 billion in 2020, but TET had already received 1.1 million a couple of years before that.
So sorry, just to clarify this, the last round of the DOC Partnership Fund, was TET successful in getting funding from that for the Waimea Inlet?
So the last community funding partnerships that DOC puts nationally, Battle for the Banded Rail, so TET got another 270k, I believe, for their
Sorry, how much?
planting. 270,000.
270,000.
Yeah.
Just
and that's to continue on the Battle for the Banded Rail planting and trapping program, but which is a continuation of a DOC funded project.
Thank you. It's just, because when I look through the, the template, like TDC's name seems to be on just about everything. And I'm just thinking, well, I do notice in the resolution that it does say subject to budgetary resources, but I would hope that things are spread evenly across the agencies who are involved with this Waimea Inlet plan, and that and a sort of a disproportionate burden is not falling on this council.
So I'm sure you can take that on board, Anna. If you...
Yes. I guess the success of this plan has been that we've been able to attract heaps of external funding. That's we wrote a very ambitious plan back in 2018 and were successful in getting over $3 million worth of funding. So even though we are coordinating the work, we don't actually, the burden is not on the ratepayer, it's on the taxpayer.
Which is one and the same people. But anyway, all right, we'll move on to, because it is happening. And I can, when I go around the estuary regularly, you do see a lot of work. Councillor Dowler, you've got a question? And then I've got Councillor Greenie.
Right, so every plan or whatever we seem to do always attracts some sort of effect on someone else along the trail. And I can remember back in 2000 and whenever this was first mooted, that the Nelson Airport showed some concerns about the possibility of bird life and their approach to the runways, etc. And they wanted to be consulted, whatever. So my question is, because we had a room of 356 people last night tell us that the council consultation is very poor from a group over in our direction, plus around the district. So I just need to know, has Nelson Airport been consulted regarding this plan before we put it here today?
Because Nelson Airport's in the Nelson area, I'm not 100% sure what the Nelson staff have done, but when we're considering projects like salt marsh restoration, we do consider the impact of potential attraction of more birds and what that might do to the flight path. And it was publicly consulted. So over the summer, the previous summer, it was on our website, it was a newsline. Nelson City Council also advertised it through their website. So we went through the whole consultation, asked for feedback. The group considered all the views received. We didn't receive one from the airport, but yeah, that is definitely a consideration of when we're planning work of what an impact on the airport potentially could be, is something we consider.
Being in a plane that's had a bird strike taking off out of Nelson Airport, it's not a pleasant exercise to go through regarding what the pilots have to do and everything to get us back on the ground safely. So I would actually not say that public consultation was good enough. I would have thought that consultation with Nelson Airport directly would have been a mandatory thing. But anyway, I'll leave it at that.
I just wonder if I can respond to that. So I catch up with Mark at CE quite a bit, so I'll have a conversation with him about it. Under their safety management system, they will be doing. I imagine they'll do risk assessment on this stuff anyway. But I will mention it to him when I meet him next, which is probably the next week or so.
Because I can recall that we don't plant eelgrass in certain places because of that in particular, and that was part of the plan. Is that right, George?
Yeah, we specifically don't do that, but also knowing colleagues over at NCC when they're planning any restoration works, for example, Airport Peninsula is actually one that they've got scope to do something with. They're having direct communications with the airport in terms of planning any plantings and potential impacts upon bird life. And what comes out of it is it kind of attracts different birds that are not necessarily ones that lead to bird strike incidents. So. But it is certainly something that is planned anywhere that's in that flight path area, specifically landing and taking off. So,
right, we've got Councillor Kittamont and then Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, through the chair. Anna and team, I was around the table with you a couple of days ago where we talked about doing a site visit, Pearl Creek. Here's a group of willing people who would probably want to go with you. So I know it's going to be every 6 weeks we meet. We'll probably go there before then, but I suggest maybe today's a good day to tell them what you're thinking about and maybe get some more input from them.
So this came about in a meeting of the Waimea Inlet Coordination Group earlier this week, where Whitebait Connection actually suggested having a site visit to Pearl Creek and having a look, hands-on look at the restoration work there and how it's impacted upon whitebait populations in that particular creek. But then also a couple of 100 metres away is something that Gillian also alluded to earlier today, was the Waimea Delta Wetland Enhancement Project that has been funded essentially as part of this action plan and management strategy. So that's another extension of the really good restoration work that's already happened in Pearl Creek on TDC land with actually gravel royalties funding, but also central government funding through the Jobs and Nature Programme. So happy to extend the invite to anyone that's interested.
I'm sure that would be appreciated. Those of us that are on the cycle, I get to see it pretty regularly. Councillor Ellis.
Are you okay for a comment? Thank you. I just, if it would be okay, I'd like to actually move this. I'd like to make a comment in that I have to say, being a member of this coordination group has been quite mind-blowing. I've been so impressed with the buy-in from all of the groups who participate and have fed into this strategy. In my view, it's actually worked extremely well as far as consultation has been concerned, with buy-in from so many groups. It's been an awesome opportunity to leverage outside funding, and the buy-in from volunteers who I've been out in the field with, and they work damn hard. And they've blown me away with the actual on-the-ground results. All too often we don't see on-the-ground results. This project has delivered a massive on-ground result. So it would be my privilege to move this motion.
So I've got a mover. Have I got a seconder? Councillor Kittamont. Any other questions? Not at all. So the motion has that slight alteration that's been highlighted. So it's only where the ones in green in the attachment, because that means there's no financial implications. So that was my one question. So it's been moved and seconded. All those, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. So now we'll move to Barbara and the climate change update.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou. Through the chair, in this report, we wanted to highlight the significant work that is happening to progress climate action at national, at regional, including Trans-Tasman with our Australian counterpart, at international level. What has happened between your last report that you received and this report? Our government has provided very clear signal that adaptation, climate change adaptation, is a key priority of the government. And this represents an incredible opportunity to work with our communities around building their resilience and working with them, and to bring them along this journey with us. So I'm happy for you to consider to take the report as read. And if you have any question, please let us know. Thank you.
Oh, all right. Okay. Did you have a question? Right. We'll just take a thought, because I thought there was a significant change from the government, but we've got that plan, that climate adaptation, that we haven't seen that piece of legislation yet, as I understand it. We haven't even seen a draft.
No, there is no draft. The bill is into the making, and we expect to see they're advancing it faster than predicted. So between now and the end of the year, we should be seeing more information.
Through the chair, if you look at paragraphs 5.8 to 11, it talks about the community-led retreat and adaptation funding issues and options paper MFE's just recently published, and the technical report as well. So that's in relation to that development of that bill.
And the interesting thing that I thought was that the government actually didn't take the advice they're given in terms of ETS, and then they were found wanting. So they've actually had their hands slapped simply because of that. So it means that more action needs to be taken. Councillor Dowler, have you got a question?
Yeah. Thank you. Just in 3.2 of the report, you talk about 2 high efficiency pumps installed and a additional air receiver at Wakefield treatment plant, which is reducing costs and whatever. Is there any way we can just fire a small section into the news line or something like that, when, even though they're minuscule things, it's still telling people out there that the council's doing the best it can with what it's got to meet our emission targets?
Absolutely.
You know,
we prepare a piece. Yeah.
People reading that report, if they ever bother, would never know.
Yeah.
So I think we've got to get it out into their face if that's possible, please.
Yeah, through the chair, the annual report will include a climate summary of the key things the TCAP have achieved over the past year as well. So that will be a newsline too. Thanks.
Good, thanks for that. Councillor Butler.
Thank you. Congratulations on the report. And I really appreciate the way that you have links all the way through it. And, you know, just the vast spread of information is quite daunting, really, going from international right down to local. And so my question is, you know, it's action on the ground, which has to result in the end from all of this. And I'm just wondering if you have given thought to how you might progress action actually on the ground and starting to educate communities, individual communities, small groups about what this is going to mean for them. Because a strategy for that, I would imagine, would be needing to be thought about.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And we are in contact with a number of other councils as well around the country. So we are actually learning from their experience. They're a little bit more advanced than we are. And we're formulating our approach, I guess, on this with the intention to bring the community with us and to inform the communities on the risks and how we will need to clearly share this kind of timings that we have in front of us. So the communication part of the work that we will be doing, it's central, and thinking is happening as we're speaking around this.
Thank you. I'm happy to move.
Okay, have I got a seconder? Councillor Kittle, second. But before we put it, I'll just make a comment. I rode the e-bus again this morning because I don't ride my e-bike when it's when you're in wearing a fancy jacket, I suppose. And the thing that I'm seeing is more and more people using it. So I rode it home last week, and then I rode it in this morning, and I'm seeing more and more people commuting. So that's one of our other good stories. People might complain about the name and what came the other day, but to me, the proof will be in the numbers that are using it. And the first stats have been excellent, and that's a big step for this district. So I'm seeing more and more doing it. Councillor Walker, you've got a question before we put the motion?
Yep, thank you. I'm just looking at I presume this is in the same report, and it's around the UN update progress on youth 2030. Is that the same report you're working on, Chair?
Yes, it is in the same report. Yes, it's in the last page. Yes.
So what is Tasman District Council's commitment to this? Like, I haven't seen this in any other report before, and maybe I haven't been looking for it, but can you explain how that's made it into our report and where TDC sits with that workplace?
Yes, in our climate response strategy, we have brought into consideration international governance framework as well, and the United Nations Global Sustainable Development Goals is part of that consideration, which was endorsed by this council. And so this is an update on the work that is happening specifically on one of the areas to further sustainable development in the world.
So can I just ask, when did TDC endorse that?
Through the chair, I don't recall. I think it was earlier this year. Councillor, do you mind if we get the date of that report and flick it to you?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, so that's all the questions. So I've got it moved. Councillor Butler, seconded Councillor Kittermont. We'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried.
Against.
Do you want that recorded?
Yes, please.
Yep. All right, so we'll now move to the policy and strategy update. So I think that's Mr. Johnson. Let's find it in here. Right. So who's going to lead off? Dwayne?
Through the chair, I'm largely happy to take my part of the report as read. The only thing I'd probably mention is that there's associated with the MAPA master plan process, a whole series of community engagement activities occurring at in the first 2 weeks or so of September. And I think Anna sent you out some information on that with the Tasman update on Friday last week. And guess just extending an invitation to you all to contribute and participate in that process as much as you like. It's essentially an information gathering exercise at that stage, but we really welcome any councillors who want to turn up and listen to what the community have to say. Thank you.
Any questions of Dwayne in his part of the report? Other than I note we've got a delay on some of the classifications, but they will be done.
Just for clarity, so it's Dwayne covering off those because I have a couple of questions, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I think that's his.
Just around the Richmond and Lakes Murchison Ward reserves.
Through the chair, yes, and Anna has just gone. I'm wondering if Alan can help me with this particular question because I'm not as involved in this process as others.
May or may not.
Yeah.
just wondering how much that's going to put the timeline out as much as anything.
Sorry, I can't answer that off the top of my head, but again, maybe we can come back to, well, this for you, Mr. Chair, to the council, but perhaps all councillors, just give you an update on that, on a timeline for that piece of work.
It's just, you could email everybody what the delay is.
And then similarly, a question about the next one, community leasing and licensing policy. We had a workshop a week or so ago, but the target completion date's the third quarter of 2024. That seems a long time away to do that piece of work.
Again, for you, Mr. Chair, it does seem a long time, but we are having to work that around higher priority work like the long-term plans, so we have allowed for that in that process. So we're trying to kind of keep it moving along, but it is lower priority than things like the LTP. We're also having to look at like the timing of consultation. So we don't want to be trying to consult on this at the same time we're doing things like consulting on the LTP. So that's the reason for that long time period. I think that was a timeline that we shared with you at the workshop last week. So that was sort of the target date.
Thank you, Alan. I don't think some of the community groups would be thrilled to hear that it's lower priority when they're paying more money than others. So if there is a way we can move that along faster, I guess that would be appreciated by them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in terms of the reserves for Richmond and Lakes Murchison, so is that process going to continue even regarding the tense claimants still being held? Wasn't there a hesitation in getting reserves while it was awaiting an outcome?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I mean, we have a sort of a protocol agreed with around this. So again, details of which escape me immediately. So again, perhaps we can share that with you. But it's has been the case where we've been through this process on a number of other reserve management plans in other wards. So we've got an established way of dealing with this, and I will get Anna to share that with you.
Thank you. And one other. It's the last item on page 85. So the Omnibus 2 plan change is completed. Is there another one coming up? And your group manager will be well aware of why I'm asking this question. So this has been completed, but is there another omnibus that is before us?
Through the chair, not exactly. However, there's a workshop after this council meeting, and where we can discuss that. We can share that over. So in more detail.
For you, Chair, I did feed the community board's view on tiny homes back to the team, so we're over it.
Thank you, Mr. And I guess just for the record, it's also the view of the councillor as well, not just the community board.
Right. Any questions of Dwayne further? Councillor Kinmont, that's right. You were on the list. Sorry.
Through the chair, I'll forgive you this time. No, Dwayne, it's all right. It's not my fault. Just, I don't know how to put it. On the spreadsheet we've got here, we've got in green in progress. Like I'm looking at coastal hazards on page 84. On the column on the right hand side, it doesn't state when things are going to be happening. It talks about the Climate Adaptation Act will have significant bearing on this work program. I'm just wondering, instead of a progress, should that be put into on hold or something like that? Or if we're going to put in progress, like the one above it, when are we scheduled to see this work? Maybe, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Respond to that. Through the chair, yes. That work is in progress. We've done 2 rounds of community engagement so far, as you're aware, following the dynamic adaptive pathway process for working through this. And next calendar year. So starting in January, February, we'll be ramping that up again with the next steps. So we'll talk about that in the workshop next as well, about our plans and timing around that, the coastal hazards work.
Just to finish that off, it'd be nice to see in these reports some little feedback like that, that it's going to be January, February, as opposed to just left blank in progress. And
Councillor, I don't know. I remember you asking me this in council, and I don't know if we're talking about the same thing here. There's a piece of work we're doing around climate change, which is, I think, what you asked me the question on. Are we talking about which bit of hazard work are we talking about? Because Dwayne, there's the piece of work that that Bob is leading to contract that we're contracted out to third party on.
We could deal with that offline, actually, if you want directly to ask the manager to make sure you're asking about the right thing.
No, we'll chat later on.
Yep. All right, so no more questions of Dwayne. Barry, your update. I got an email as we're sitting here to say that there's been no appeals on those 2 plan changes. Is that?
That's correct. Yes, I'll take the report as read. So a couple of things to update you on. The Murchison and Brightwater plan changes, there's been no appeals. We just had an email back from the Environment Court. So those 2 plan changes are now operative, which will be good news, particularly for the Murchison folk. And also yesterday, the 2 RM reform bills got royal assent. So we now have the Spatial Planning Act and the Natural and Built Environments Act as of yesterday. And that has some immediate implications for the council around monitoring, around compliance, around information requirements as well. So there's some fact sheets that will circulate around that, but most of the implications are still to come, all things. So they're probably the two key things. Otherwise, I'll take questions if there's any questions. Thanks.
Well, I'll start if you like for the Deputy Mayor. Just progress on the scoping, which you commented on. And I did talk to some MFE staff, and it's good that you worked for them before, because they certainly know you when I was at the local government conference, and they were very aware that resourcing as well as money is important for us. So how's the progress?
It's going really well. So we are currently working through and having a lot of discussions with staff, both at Nelson City Council and at TDC around the applications, trying to get a handle on actually what would the transition look like, what would the future state look like. And the same thing is happening with iwi as well. So we've got a number of hui organised. Kathy Fletcher is leading that work. So it's full steam ahead. It's on track at the moment, and we will be briefing councillors. I think we're looking for a workshop date at the moment just to be able to brief councillors in detail.
Thanks for that. Deputy Mayor Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just Barry, just clarifying the plan changes that are now operative. We don't have to wait for any further notification or putting the maps out there. They're immediately operative, but we will put out maps that cover the affected areas to the communities.
Through the chair, yes, we will. That'll be in the next plan update, but we'll notify all submitters, and the teams internally have been notified as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. No other questions? Oh, Councillor Butler.
Thanks. Just in relation to the, I mean, maybe this is the right forum to ask it, but just in relation to the water conservation order and your comment that the water conservation order will set a water allocation limit. What's the current state of play with resource consents for irrigators in the Tākia Valley? Have we got people who have got that they've applied for resource consents and they're waiting for them, and or are they having renewals coming up, or because this is going to impact directly on them? And so given that this information's out, we don't know if it's going to go to appeal or not, but if it doesn't go to appeal, then there could be some changes coming. You know, that landowners have to plan ahead for.
Through the chair, my understanding is all the existing consents were renewed, I think, just in the last couple of years. There may be some outstanding ones that are still going through that, but they won't get caught. There's currently no allocation limit in the Takaka Valley, but there is an informal waiting list. I don't think anyone that doesn't have an existing consent has applied, but there is that informal waiting list, and I think no one's really been prepared to apply for a new consent, given the last person that did that ended up going all the way to the Environment Court and it cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we're kind of in this limbo at the moment, but all the existing irrigators, as I understand it, have had their consents renewed. Thanks.
All right, so no other questions, and I'm sure we've got a workshop your work plan going forward, so I'm sure you'll get some questions when we get to that as well. So can I need a mover? Yeah. All right, Deputy Mayor Bryan, Councillor Kittlemont, seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. On to the next item. I'm pretty sure it's the resident satisfaction survey.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Neil will present that rather than Sandra this morning.
Morning, Neil, and over to you.
Morning, councillors. I'll take the report as read and happy to answer any questions that you have.
All right, well, no one else is putting the hand up. I'll start. I thought there were some general improvements, but the interesting ones that went down were ones we would expect in some ways. No. I thought there were some very good improvements, but the ones was roads, and roads went down. Roads went down in satisfaction, and that's to be expected if we looked at the constraints on budgets. But some of that won't be just our roads, because I'm sure it doesn't differentiate between state highways and our roads, because I drove the Lewis Pass and I thought it was in some of its worst condition a couple of weeks ago. And the other one was stormwater, and we had a significant rain event. But a big area of our district isn't covered by stormwater. They're not within our urban drainage areas. But otherwise, it looked like quite a good report. The satisfaction was up.
Yeah, through the chair, despite some notable downturns in a couple of indices like the eroding, the stormwater, the curbside recycling, it is generally a good news story. In fact, the movements and some key indicators like overall satisfaction are notably up, not just a little bit. So, despite some of those things, but, the council's doing, I guess, the perception of our customers through the resident surveys, the council's doing a better job in the last 12 months than it was doing the preceding 12 months, with some exceptions.
I think it was very good. The people at the counter, public counter in particular, have a very difficult job at times, and they do very, very well. Councillor Kittlemont and then Councillor Green.
I've got about a page of queries here, so I'll keep it short. I follow echo of the comments around here. I've written down here, how can we celebrate all these successes? I'm sure staff would appreciate a neat up or long lunch. Well, no, someone's done bloody well. 100%, I've just lost the page here. 100% of people happy with library services. Wow, you try and match that around the country. So if it could be passed on that maybe through the CEO that she put some money aside for some.
Well, Councillor, we have that, for instance, we have celebrated. I baked a cake. And
oh, have you now?
Well, I didn't necessarily bake the cake. It might have got baked by someone at home, but we do celebrate those absolutely. But I think you need to also look at yourselves and reflect on. We get hit by negativity a lot, but looking around the table, you've been part of that as well. And the decisions you're making here is as much part of the satisfaction of this community as much as the services we provide out there. So, this is a team approach, all of us in this.
Yep. So very quickly, what are we going to do to promote these figures? We all too often have people with glasses half full, half empty, seem to generate all the noise in the media. So we need to be able to push back to the people who've got glasses half full and say, this is what we're doing and this is the value you're getting for your rates.
So I think we've got some amazing media at the back who will help us. We've got our comms team, but I think also I would encourage yourselves to shout from the rooftops about the performance of this council. You're well connected in the communities, and I think you need to be spreading the word as much as we other avenues we normally use.
And the roading section, looking at the comments there, potholes. Common, we put it in the word search here, and potholes comes up a lot. So through you guys, maybe if that could be looked at with a view of reducing the number of potholes or being a bit more proactive.
Yeah, through the chair, you recall that one of the big movers you made in the annual plan this year was to increase road maintenance, which will directly address that. It's preventative maintenance, really getting more the resale budget up, which helps avoid potholes longer term. And the report does note, we'll have to have a pretty serious conversation with you through the long-term plan about that particular activity and what level of service you want to provide to your community.
And the absolute last one from me, page 175, the benchmarking. Nelson seems to have a little minus sign there on a number of occasions compared to a lot of other areas. It'd be nice to know why there's, sorry, page 175. Just looking through the benchmarking exercise, Tasman, Nelson, we've got figures going right throughout the other areas, but Nelson seemed to be having a minus sign So is that information withheld or just sort of they don't actually collect that data?
I suspect that they don't actually measure it, but I can't confirm off the top of my head, or at least they don't report it. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't looked at Nelson's results, but yeah, I expect that the resident survey, the company that we use, just simply look on their website to look for their resident survey, and if it's not reported, then they can't put it in ours. So I expect they have some sort of they report it somehow, but maybe it's not publicly available.
And congratulations to the Newsline staff. Look how many people access Newsline to get their data. For a simple little bit of paper that goes out, Chris Choate and his team really need a good pat on the back, because that's obviously an important way our ratepayers find out what's going on.
That's not a question, so that's a thank you. All right, so we'll move on. Councillor Green, you had a question?
Yeah, just in terms of the survey group, so noted that only 405 people actually completed the survey. Just wondering how many people were actually contacted. And also the cell phone landline mix. More people now are leaving landline and going to cell phone. So just wondering what the mix has been, because that will bias the results potentially.
Just checking the numbers, I believe there's a total of around 10,000 numbers were called, so quite significant. In terms of the mix, it was 400 surveys in total, 232 through landlines and 173 through cell phones. And so the mix of that will be dependent on things like age and the amount of people using landlines and cell phones.
Yeah,
sorry. I might just comment that 400 may not seem like enough, but it reaches a threshold where you can get a high degree of confidence, and the report explains the level of confidence you can have in the survey results. It's pretty good.
Yeah, statistics. Just out of interest, 405, be interested to know what the trend was in terms of the earlier surveys, whether we had a higher completion rate. And just to clarify that, you said 10,000 were contacted and we only had 405 complete. Is that right?
Yep, that's clear. Yep.
So it's a pretty low completion rate. That's a bit of concern.
Yeah, through the chair, I will double check that might be the numbers available to them. I think they have a large database like that. The 405 isn't that is actually a target. We've tried to, there's a reasonably scientific basis for the number they try to do. There's a cost in completing surveys over and above that. So we try to get the right number of survey respondents, that gives us a representative sample without spending too much money. So actually, if we go look back in the past, it won't be much different. I can say that because I recall the numbers are all around the 400 mark.
Okay. Yep, those are just my concerns. And just the landline cell phone, I'm conscious that a lot more people are now moving, and it's a reflection, I suppose, of copper lines changing and people used to access landlines through internet providers, and they're doing less of that now, and generally more of a cell phone mix. I'd like to see maybe the cell phone lift a bit, because a lot more people are now using cell phone as opposed to landline, and landline might create a bit of bias towards the demographics, which I know you've highlighted in there as well. Can I also just make the observation that it's interesting to see that table at 9.3, which I think was a really good table to show where things are, and again emphasizing, I think, the concern with rates, and general satisfaction with our community facilities, which suggests, do we really need any more, I suppose. But just noting there the toilets, again, it would be interesting to get a picture of the shift from the last survey to this one, maybe dark red dots and lighter dots to indicate where there's a shift, because it's really hard to see where the shift has been in these areas on the table. And I know we've done this table before.
Yeah, I'll contact the survey company and see if we can get that information.
Yeah, because I think it's the trend that's really important in these surveys. We'll just emphasise that.
Okay.
Or even getting a summary on the significant change, and maybe it's a different type of diagram, a bar chart or something that shows the shifts, as well as this matrix as well. Maybe that's a clearer way of providing it. I'll leave it to the experts to provide it, but it would be good to get a trend on the change.
Right, thanks for that. I've got Councillor Maru and then Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And that's great, because 9.3 is where I am. So thank you. So I'm just, where do we get that roads are low performance and low priority? So it's in the box of low performance and low importance. So we're saying we're going to be happy with a 50% odd satisfaction rate in our roads, because it's not moved over to the other box in terms of being important. So are we just going to be happy with status quo?
Through the chair, you should just pay care how you interpret that graph. It's about how these things relate in relation to overall satisfaction. When you can contrast this result with the result for roading, which I think is halved thereabouts in the last few years, it just gives you that sense of where roading fits into the overall picture of council. It doesn't mean that roads are not important. It's just one way of representing some of the information. And I would add, it's a tool. It's not necessarily determinative.
And I think, sorry, just to add to that, because apart from the economist sat at the table there, is that I really encourage you to sort of take this as part of the package of when you were doing the LTP decision making, because this is a bit of feedback from the community. It's just it's a bit of feedback. That's what people are. Is what we're hearing out there. But I think you should use all these data sources when you're making these decisions around where to invest money.
And I guess I absolutely agree in that. So then reflecting on the statement in 9.4, how is roads excluded from that list? So in terms of the most poorest performing was the roads, yet it's excluded from the results analysis indicated environmental information, blah, 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 contribute to the most overall resident satisfaction. I just go, how do you arrive at that summary if you don't take the quadrants into consideration?
I'll let the guys talk about this specifically, but what I think, just coming back to Councillor Malin's comment, that this is people's perception of roads, which probably includes state highway as well. And this is a challenge we've got with this stuff, isn't it?
Although the commentary looks like potholes, potholes, and potholes. But point that here.
Look, that's been in the national news media for the last few months as well.
No issue with that. Just in terms of the quadrant that we've currently got at 9.3, if you take a quick look at that, it appears we know roads are poor, but it's in the low performance, it's in the low importance. So when you use these quadrants for anything else, how can I quickly achieve my satisfaction rates by investing in some things that make a difference? Roads aren't in that quadrant currently. They're close, but they're not in it.
That's right. I mean, the commentary in 9.4 is a direct reflection of the right-hand bottom quadrant. Yeah, and roads don't appear in it. I'd endorse entirely what John has said. Use this as one piece of information because you'll be having conversations with your community and you'll have to judge the relative weight of things on the basis of that plus all this other information. What it does say is that roads are not dinting people's overall satisfaction with council, even if roads are still an issue for them.
That's correct. And when you look at some other councils, like councils around the country, ours are actually rated slightly higher than other districts. So I hate to say what other districts are like in some ways. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, thank you through you, Chair. It's probably partly been answered and the questions partly come through from Councillor Murray. But I mean, it's great that we get those survey results. It's great that we understand that data. And I know that, John Ridd, you've said it needs to be reflected in the long-term plan. Just wondering, whose job is it to weave some of that into the long-term plan for the early figures that fiscal package looks like? Because if the summary, as I've read it, excludes roads, does that mean it doesn't get filtered through? Or is that us as councillors' role, or is that staff's role to take this survey and interweave it into something that we can look at and then make some informed decisions around?
Councillor, I think you've hit the nail on the head with the last comment. I think it's part of the information we provide. I mean, there's some other surveys we do. This isn't the only survey we do. For instance, there's one that's done around the regulatory function, which Kim will be providing, I think, to the regulatory committee at some point in the near future, which tells a really good story around that service. But, you know, I think, as I said, you know, we'll weave it into the conversation, but I mean, it's just part of the information you're going to have. You'll have to have the technical advice as well from Jamie and from the our asset managers, because that's crucial as well. So it's just part of the picture. And we'll just help you. We'll just collectively have to work through that with the long-term plan process as we get into a bit more detail with that.
Yeah, great for that. And one more thing, if I may, through you, Chair, does Drew Hayes from our Alliance, does he get access to this data? Because as it's written, pothole, 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 and he always looks at me and I always smile about how many potholes he's fixed. There's a big story behind potholes. It's not just about a hole. Yeah, it's about the maintenance. It's about the lack of service. It's about how old the road is, how well it's populated with cars, rah. But here we sit with this information. Can someone assure me that he gets access to some of this so that it's not just us, but the team that works with us? Thanks.
Yeah, through the chair. Look, I have zero doubt that Jamie is sharing this with his contractors. And you're absolutely right, Councillor. It is a water story. We have to bear in mind the contractors have a certain budget that we provide them for reseal. And, you know, they're not necessarily, their job is to respond to potholes when they form, but they're not necessarily the masters of, you know, the decisions that influence the long-term deterioration of the network. That is within this chamber's responsibility.
Councillor Kittermont, are you happy to move the report?
Yeah, I can move it. Bad hair day. But it's not just about potholes, but I listened to around the comments around the table here. What are we doing about it and making sure that something happens? Because we just can't ignore this data. I think our ratepayers are saying to us, we need to do something about it. And Drew Hayes getting it sorted out is one start, but we need to refocus, realign in our finances towards greater efforts on it. So yes,
we actually did in the last annual plan. We've put some more. So we have taken some action in terms of roads, but we also remember that we only pay for a certain percentage of it, and we have to get money from government as well. So there's two sides to it.
I agree, but that's part of it.
Second.
All right, you're happy to second.
Through the chair, I might just add, look, we've got some conversations with you coming up for the long-term plan, and we'll absolutely be putting this at the forefront of that. And alongside a lot of other priorities we've been told are a priority. And so we will be asking you to reflect on the information available, some information that we provide up to you about kind of risk and opportunity, and making your calls about your priorities heading into the long-term plan, so that where things are really, relatively the highest priority for you, can make sure that gets the biggest attention through the long-term plan. That's coming up in the next month or so.
Right. We've already done something, and you've got an opportunity to do more, councillor.
I've moved it, not removed it, I've moved it.
We'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Now, we've got a motion to move into confidential session. So I've got councillor Dowler moving, councillor Butler, or councillor Shelker is seconding. So we have to do the Zoom